It's 3:15, and that means it's time for
The Real Deal with Bill McNeil.
That's right. Welcome once again to The Real Deal with Bill McNeil. I'm your host, Bill McNeil, and you're probably wondering exactly what is the real deal today.
Hey, good question.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. We've had the big news coming out the last 24, 48 hours where basically AT&T, I guess they're admitting a mistake, and there's going to be a merger between WarnerMedia, the entities that they acquired in their big deal where they acquired all that debt, and Discovery Channel. And I guess they're going to become a new publicly traded company where essentially the primary stockholders are going to be shareholders from AT&T, shareholders from Discovery, and they're going to create this new entertainment entity. This should have some effects on DC Comics, and here to talk with me about that is my good friend, comic book writer, editor, Joe Corallo. How you doing, Joe?
I'm all right, Wes. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm seeing a lot of proclamations of doom and gloom. This certainly spells the end for DC Comics. I imagine that DC Comics as a publishing entity had little to no bearing really on the deal that has been made here.
Sure.
Does this mean there are going to be changes for DC Comics? Almost certainly, but we still have to wait for the deal to get approved. That's probably likely to be a year, maybe longer, before there's finally some more restructuring. Maybe there'll be something, some downsides in the midterm as they're waiting for that to happen. But it's kind of crazy the amount of upheaval will happen over at DC Comics with this WarnerMedia, AT&T, and then AT&T realizing that having the world's largest communications, communications company and adding a media like entertainment aspect to it probably wasn't a good idea. And DC's just like bouncing all over the place, just kind of going with the flow here. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this. This has been brought up before. Prior to this announcement, people were talking about how the rollout for some of this stuff was absolutely affected by the pandemic. That there were tracks where you could see them reaching certain financial goals and getting out of debt quicker that evaporated with the pandemic. And that's true for a lot of companies and industries. It's not just the case for AT&T.
I was looking at the AT&T financials and all, because they have like 5-year notes, 10-year notes, 20 years notes. Yeah. When all this debt comes due and you have to kind of pay it back, I was like, you know what? With all their projections, with the amount of debt they have, they should be okay. Yeah. But then when the pandemic happened, you're absolutely right. Next thing you know, you start having losses. Parts of your company that you were expecting to bring in revenue, some profits, you ended up, causing kind of being a liability for the year. And I was like, wow, I don't see how they're actually going to make it. Obviously, so they saw the same thing and decided to essentially cut bait, but still have a financial stake and an ability, I guess, to go back and buy out the company in the future if they want to. Yeah,
and it's a significant stake. It's like 35%. I think they're going to be keeping. So that's not nothing.
Yeah, of an enormous entertainment entity. Now, this deal, just thinking about it, not with DC Comics in mind. Obviously, DC Comics characters, as far as movies, streaming, television productions are going to be part of all this. But you can see where when you look at HBO Max, they have a great catalog of movies. Sterling catalog of movies. They have a pretty darn good catalog of live scripted television shows. Really high production values. They're probably going to have to change that if they want to be producing lots of shows for streaming, but that's another thing. But They really didn't have unscripted television. They didn't have a lot of content that was just food type content. People that DIY type content. They're getting all of that with this Discovery merger, and obviously the entities that they had over there with Discovery Plus, their streaming, they didn't have all the things that WarnerMedia are going to bring to the table. So it makes sense that they would bring all these things together and really try and cast the widest net possible to really grow these streaming platforms and try and compete with Netflix, Disney Plus, and even Amazon Prime. Because you got to have a lot of content has a lot of people interested in it.
No, it's true. This will really help them diversify what they have available. It's very hard to compete with companies like Disney and Netflix. Both have a very wide range catalog of offerings. And like you're saying, HBO certainly has great movies and a lot of scripted content, but they don't have things like anything in Flavortown or the Property Brothers and things like that. Like a lot of other content that people really enjoy, that people binge watch, that people put
very bingeable,
that people put on the background.
I love Food Network.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy stuff like that. And now this opens up the opportunity for things like maybe the Justice League will have to defend Flavortown at some point.
It's about time.
I
think we've always waited for that one.
Yeah. Maybe Guy Fieri seems like he could easily be one of the Flash's rogues.
Oh, he's got the haircut for it.
He absolutely does. He got that. And, maybe, Lois and Clark are going to look for a home and the Property Brothers can help them out. Like there's a lot of,
crossover potential. Absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Now, as far as DC Comics, tons of upheaval. This is probably the worst thing. And that this doesn't only go for DC Comics. This goes for everything that was happening over at WarnerMedia. They fired so many people with this restructuring to go into this AT&T corporate structure. Like just at DC alone, you're talking like hundreds of years of corporate knowledge about the comic book industry that were shown the door in cost-cutting measures, which obviously came down from up high at AT&T. They closed down entire studios that were kind of like developmental, movie studios and stuff like that because they didn't have the space for them because they weren't an entertainment company. They were a communications company. Yeah. And then for them a few years later into this to just say, you know what, we made a mistake. Let's move this back into, where it should be, into the entertainment sphere. We have this mega entertainment company. It sucks for the people that lost their jobs. I can't imagine how much expertise, knowledge, how many years of experience were walked through the door, likely with some pretty hefty, golden parachutes on the way out, the name of those executives. And for them to probably need them right now as they kind of readjust the company once again.
Sure. This is a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because on the one hand, absolutely, you can understand and empathize with people who lost their jobs in any situation. But in this situation, to then see so shortly afterwards that there's going to be a change where maybe they would have kept their jobs anyway. Maybe they wouldn't have, but maybe they would have. But on the other hand, you also had everyone constantly saying, AT&T keeps messing up. What are they going to do to course correct? And now they're course correcting. And now some of those same people are going like, I can't believe they're course correcting. And it's like, well, if they didn't do anything and kept going, people would have been mad. If they just did this, people are mad. So
they'd already started cutting bait in other areas. They kind of got rid of their AT&T U-verse. I think it's DirecTV. I mean, they took like a $50 billion haircut on that one, just as far as the acquisition cost to what they got for it when they unloaded it. They unloaded Crunchyroll, I think, for $1.5 billion just to cut down on this debt. It was almost inevitable that eventually they were going to have to do something, cut into this debt. And they got a fair amount of money for it. They still get an ownership stake in the Warner Media Discovery, whatever it's going to be called when it's done. I don't, I imagine it's still going to be HBO Max. Maybe they change the name even with the streaming service. But Warner Media also takes some of that debt with them, so they offload a little bit of that with them as well and make this thing a little bit more manageable. And they can get back to their core competency, which is communications. Yeah, they are a communications company. They don't have to worry about this media stuff, but they're still going to make some money off it. In the short term for DC Comics, this is probably good.
Sure.
There might be some type of downsizing, in the meantime, but I imagine you just business as usual. Whatever you've been doing, keep going. Unless they absolutely just don't want to publish comics, then they could close it down at any time, which was the case before anyway. But being a part of like a media company, rather than being a little part of an entertainment part of a big communications company, is going to be a better, more stable place for DC Comics to be. They're probably going to understand the importance of the characters, how valuable they are to their streaming platforms and stuff moving forward.
Yeah. But
there's definitely, almost assuredly, going to be more restructure. once they finally get the deal done, and then they start realizing where it's going to fit in WarnerMedia and Discovery and everything, and they're going to do it all over again. Do they have enough? Is there enough meat left on the bone for them to cut positions? I imagine they'll cut some people, but they're probably going to be doing some hiring too. So more upheaval.
And to be clear, when AT&T had downsized, they did have some openings for positions. It wasn't just downsizing; they were also adding people in different areas. So
most notably, Daniel Cherry III.
Absolutely. So you will probably see some people get cut while they're adding other people. We might be seeing more people added. We might be seeing maybe different expectations. So there will be a course correction. Does Daniel Cherry stay? I don't know. Do they move him into another part? But people were complaining for a long time, and with merit, that DC shouldn't be answering directly to AT&T because, like you were saying, they're a communications company. Now they're in a position where they won't be. They'll be back to answering to Warner,
which is now going to be headed by the CEO of Discovery. So obviously he's had a different, non-scripted, more, I guess, educational kind of base things, kind of that kind of programming, completely different than what WarnerMedia does.
Yeah.
So you got to see where he thinks, what does he think about DC characters? Obviously it's going to be kind of on the back burner. He's not going to be like, what do we think about DC Comics? He's going to be talking about HBO Max. Obviously DC has a place in that, but
sure.
Hey, if he changes his mind and he decides there's no need to publish, there's no need to publish because there's a new boss.
There could be a little bit more of taking a step back again, where it's like, hey, let's just try to put it in a position where if they're making money, we can kind of step back, let them do their thing, and provide us with IP for the streaming service. It could be that. We could be seeing something like that. Or maybe it's going to be more hands-on. Maybe, people at Discovery are going to be looking through these comics and being, there's not enough casual conversation, there's not enough characters eating. And maybe we'll start getting DC Comics where characters are finally eating and talking more.
Yep. Maybe the Discovery people come in there and they say, listen, there's not enough politics or ideology in this comic book. Can we start to get the message in the Batman book? We feel like it's not evident.
Yeah, with something like Discovery, I would feel like there would even be more of a push to avoid that. And yeah, but I think, if anything, I think we'll move away from nothing heavy. The only heavy stuff is going to be the rich food that will be served in the comics. But yeah, we'll certainly see how it goes. But this could end up being an overall good in a lot of ways. We could see less hands-on approach for the comics division.
Can they take more risks? Does everything have to be Batman? Maybe under the new regime, they give them a little bit more free reign to do risks. We want you to see you develop some other characters, maybe some classic characters, and not every. It feels like a third of DC's line right now is Batman related. It's frustrating.
Sure, maybe we'll see a paring down a little bit of the line where
that's already happening.
Yeah, but it's like it's already happening, but then all the books are Batman. So so maybe we'll see. I should have phrased it more as like maybe we'll see a more evenly paring down of the line, where it will be like even if Batman books are like a quarter of the line, I feel like that would still be
improvement.
Yes, over everything, because there's so much more IP to develop. I mean, when you look at this and you see some of these properties they have, like House of Mystery, that's great to develop for a show. They have all these comics and storylines that work as like a one and done horror episodes and things like that Doorway to Nightmare, same thing.
Like the Tales from the Crypt kind of thing back in the day.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff they have that fit in that. There's all sorts of in their backlog, with Sergeant Rock and Black Hawks and stuff like that. You could have some war stories and there's so many different kinds of comics in that backlog. It's like, bring some of that stuff back up and have some fun, make some new kind of content that you can mine from this from DC.
Yeah, but the one thing we can say for sure, news of DC's demise has been greatly exaggerated. Nobody knows what's going to happen with DC Comics. This could be awful. This could mean the end of DC Comics. It could mean a resurgence of DC Comics. We don't know because we don't know what the new structure is going to be in place. The deal isn't even finalized yet. Mm-hmm. We haven't heard anybody, specifically the CEO of Discovery right now. We haven't heard him in an interview speak about DC and what are his thoughts on DC properties. So it's all up in the air. It could be great. It could be bad. I think in the short term, it's good. It's good for DC Comics to be part of an entertainment-first company.
Absolutely. And there's no point in running around screaming the sky is falling here. DC Comics are still coming out this week on Tuesday, and they're coming out next week on Tuesday, and they're going to be coming out for months and months, if not years and years. There's no immediate call for any craziness or wackiness. No matter what happens, Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman aren't going anywhere. They will always exist.
I saw some people's take was AT&T was just trying to dump DC Comics. AT&T did not dump DC Comics here.
Yeah.
AT&T dumped WarnerMedia because they realized they had gotten themselves in over their heads as far as bringing an entertainment portion of their company. Mm. They had way too much debt, and with their future earnings affected by the pandemic, they probably weren't going to be able to meet their notes on time. And they had to do something to pay off the debt. And, let's cut out the entertainment part, do a big merger. We'll still have a stake in it. Our shareholders will are going to be happy because now they have primary ownership of that along with the Discovery shareholders. And they don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah. And they can have their debt. We'll have our debt. We can move forward. This had nothing to do with DC Comics. That's, as a comic book, channel, I wish DC Comics was the driving force of this deal. Mm-hmm. It's not. Of course. It's the little pimple on the ass of the deal that comes along with it, unfortunately.
Sure. Yeah, but that part just is in the physical printing of the comics and making that content. Batman and Superman, particularly Batman, are still gigantic. Batman is something that's well beyond just DC Comics.
That's movies, television shows, video games, licensing, billions of dollars annually generated by Batman himself.
Yeah, and they're still all in on the movie that I think is coming out next year. Yeah,
the Gotham TV show that's coming out that's going to be a tie-in to that, where we have the Commissioner Gordon from. Well, it's probably not Commissioner Gordon. Gordon from the TV show, or the movie is going to be in the TV show.
Yep.
And we've got some. I think there's a new video game that they were showing some gameplay a little while ago. We should see that too.
Yeah.
So lots of Batman stuff coming.
Lots of Batman stuff. Batman Fortnite is too successful for them to not do something similar again. I still like some of the other ideas, just kicking around of other video game crossovers, like Wonder Woman Among Us.
We need Superman Frogger as Superman tries to cross the. That's probably too old, right? No one's gonna.
That's up there with maybe Metamorpho or Plastic Man Tetris and trying to
Centipede.
Oh yeah.
That'll be fun. All right, Joe, I do want to say thank you very much just talking about this issue. Obviously, we're going to have more information in the days ahead. We will be talking about it live on the Comics Aficionados on Saturday, and we'll see you then.
Yep, sounds good.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.